Here we go.
All right.
So I think we'll be live momentarily. So for those of you that are, here we go. I'm going to turn off my volume.
I wasn't prepared as I had hoped. I'm sorry.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Staying Sane podcast. I'm here with co-host Cassandra McLean. We're both hypnotherapists, and we talk about how to stay sane in a crazy world. And today we've got a big challenge. Because I think this is an issue that has affected both of us, which is the loss of parents. But Cassandra, something happened to you just recently that is definitely worthy of mention. So what happened?
Welcome to the Staying Sane podcast. Today's topic is grief. And it is because my dear, 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 wonderful father, my dad, just died 2 weeks ago. He died on, now it'll be 20 days ago. He died on July 15th. And it is a huge loss to my life.
Yeah, I'm sorry, by the way.
I know. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful friend. And this grief, this loss, now I just shared with you, Albert, before we started recording, I define grief as the multifaceted emotional response to a life-altering loss. So anything might be lost. I can lose this pen. Oh, I don't know where it is. I'm not going to be grieving for that. But when my life is now changed because this thing that was really important to my life no longer exists, there's an emptiness that's created there. Now, this loss of my dad, who was so important to me, we were really like soulmates. We were soul family as well as blood family. If you saw us together, it was just obvious. There was some magic that we shared that I don't share with anybody else, and I never will. So that's no longer present in my physical life, in my earthly world. My spiritual life, I'll always love my dad eternally, blah, blah, blah. But here in reality, I have to deal with the fact that I can no longer just pick up the phone and talk to him.
Just so I understand too, is that there was no warning. It wasn't like sometimes people have a terminal decline or something like that. You didn't expect him to, he died suddenly.
That's right. And I'm proud of him for that. I think he worked his magic in the very end of his life, because one of his biggest fears was being a burden or being unable to take care of himself. He lived alone on a 16-acre property in rural Tennessee. And he was frequently, something that he talked about is that he didn't want to, quote, stroke out on the front lawn and just be left for somebody to find him 3 days later, like baking in the Tennessee heat. Like, this was a real fear of his. So, but he also certainly didn't want to, get old and sick and die in a hospital. That he wouldn't stand for. What he wanted, he was very clear about. He said it many, many times. He said, I want a sudden, violent death. And I'm sure that what he meant by that was like some cowboy style shootout. But he did have an instantaneous cardiac arrest on his lawn, but in the company of a registered nurse who was scheduled like weeks in advance to do this home health intake assessment thing. And I genuinely believe that somewhere all of his energy field knew, I'm going to die soon. The best time would be right now, when this nurse is already coming to my house. I get to die in my house my way. He always lived life on his terms. I'm sure he died on his terms. And I'm sure that the last words out of his mouth, he was flirting with that nurse. I'm sure of that. He said some totally inappropriate comment to this poor woman who's just doing her job. And he's some dirty old man who just has to say, hey, you're looking pretty good. And then he just died the sudden violent death that he always wanted. I like to think that this is how he went out. But this is the third major life-altering loss that I've experienced in under a year. This is why, it's really coming to a head for us to discuss, or for me to share publicly now, or start sharing. I feel like God or the universe is insisting that I be an expert on grief, because in less than 1 year, I've had a divorce. Then on April 1st, my best friend also suddenly dropped dead. But at 45 years old, I was supposed to have dinner with him that same night. Absolutely no reason to suspect this person was anything other than
Yeah.
healthy and
Yeah.
going to live a long life. He
Yeah.
suddenly died on April 1st. Then July 15, my father suddenly dies. So a
Yeah.
lot of life altering loss in a short period of time. And yet here I am carrying on in my commitment to peace and love.
But also, you said you're an unintended expert on grieving. Like that's, I think I realize that's kind of quite profound. I think we all are. No one decides, oh, I'm gonna do a lot of great grieving this year. I can't wait to start grieving. It's not how it works. Uh,
Right.
and so yeah, it's sort of laid at your feet, and so that must have been a shock. And you are your father's only child. Is that correct? So is that another? So it's a bit that makes it challenging too. There's nobody to compare notes with. There's nobody, or is there? Um,
No, I mean, he had his friends. I spent the last 2 weeks at his property in Tennessee organizing his affairs, documents and possessions and so on. And so I've spent some time with his friends because there is no other family. It's really just me. One of his friends totally stepped up and just took on the role of being what family is supposed to be at these times. So I want to shout out to Sean DeJean, who's this Cajun motherfucker. I don't even know how to describe him. He's
Asian
such a
motherfucker.
character. He brought so much joy and happiness to my life. He's just such a character, just his presence, right? So, one thing that we want to start to share with the listeners on this podcast on this topic is how can you move through whatever you're grieving in your life, which we all are grieving something on a micro and macro scale, but also how can we be supportive of others? How can we be a contribution of something positive, helpful, consoling to their process of grief without accidentally saying the wrong thing and upsetting them further?
So sorry,
This is really the thing I'm going through.
because you experienced it. So maybe you can give us some. What I'm going to say is that it hadn't occurred to me before this conversation, but I realized that when you find out that somebody's parent has unfortunately died, let's say suddenly, and then you're suddenly talking to them, it is a nervous, high pressure situation, and you can see how people unintentionally might really just say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. What was your experience? How have people been?
Well, what I'm observing that's most upsetting is the absence of showing up.
Mm.
And I do think that it's like I could quickly just, devolve and go into like, nobody even cares about me. But I don't think that it's that. I know that people in the world really care for me and love me and like me and consider me a friend. And if they knew that I was hurt by their absence of showing up, they would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't. And I've even had a conversation like this with one of my friends. I'm like, you haven't even called me once since my dad died. Like we're close. And she said, I'm sorry, I thought you were with family. And I'm like, what family? You know my family situation. What are you talking about? But then after that, she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I should be doing this. And then she did. And I believe it's sincere, we're friends, it's okay. But I think it's symptomatic of a culture of just being on our cell phones. A text is considered a communication. My memories of a serious death in the family go way back to when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old. And I guess I was like 14 when my grandpa died. And I just remember that like people were bringing over lasagnas and flowers and cards were coming in the mail for weeks. And there was like people were just knocking on the door. I made you a casserole. Like that's an Americana cliche because it really happened. I remember experiencing it as a kid. Like the door was just ringing. The house just constantly had people coming and going. And now we are in this very disconnected society, and people have texted me. Do you think that that's like really showing up for your friend? Is you send them a text when their dad dies? Hey, I'm sorry your dad died. I don't even get a phone call. What about my card in the mail? I love snail mail. Where's my fucking casserole? Where is the support that I think is what's appropriate? But we don't know that. We think somebody else is doing it.
I think that this is like a general issue of people.
It's a general issue.
Of people being afraid of heavy states, whether it's grieving, accidents, disabilities, cancer diagnosis, like things that are just heavy. People just don't know what to do. And there was much more tradition, as you pointed out, like the deliver the casserole. There were these clean traditions that people would just, lock into when they were faced with these scenarios. And now people don't know what to do. And they just hope it doesn't happen to them, but it will,
Yeah. I think there's an ignorance that has happened because we have silenced our elders and trashed our own culture. And we've replaced it with TikTok. And so
I made you this TikTok for your, sorry about your dad. I made you a TikTok, Yeah.
Yeah. Like literally, like I'm getting, I think that there's a misconception that texting somebody or like putting a heart on their post counts as showing up for them or being connected. But if you choose to take on the empathy of being in that role, okay, you're the one whose parent just died and I'm your friend and all you get from me is a text. Just put yourself in those shoes. Do you feel loved and supported, or is it like, oh, that's just like the minimum of effort? But it's not because I don't love you. It's because I don't know any better and I'm not mature enough to it's like we have this like perpetual arrested development of Western adults that are just still acting like teenagers. Like, oh, like send a condolence card. That's what my mom did.
Well,
yeah, how you're the mom.
There's a really interesting opportunity here to actually kind of go through it. Like I would just say, like let's look at realistically. Realistically, you find out that somebody close to you has lost a parent or lost somebody close, let's say, and then you send a text to say, "Oh, and this is you finding out or letting the person know that you're aware that this something tragic has happened." So you send a text saying, "I'm really sorry about your dad." But then what's next? That's the real question. Should they say something like, "Let me know if you need someone to talk to," or it's like it's awkward because even when I just said that, I was like, that sounds weird. You need someone to talk to makes it sound like I'm kind of like, again, throwing the ball in your court where that's not my intention. So part of it is we don't have good customs for this, but it should be something like that.
So great. So we're scaling up, right? We're going from like the lowest level of like, you just send a text, hey, sorry, your dad died. And that's how you show up for your friend. Okay. That's this level one. Now, level two is you call them, you share some words, you listen, and then you say something along the lines of, if you want to talk more, just let me know. You can reach out to me at any time. I'm here for you. That's good. That's definitely a level up.
And by the way, what you just said is actually not that hard, because I think in our culture, we're overly obsessed with advice, and people worry that, oh, if I talk to my friend, I better have some good advice ready, which is not what anybody wants or needs. They actually just want to be able to express emotion, which is process. They just want to process.
Yes. The words that I use or the phrase that I like is compassionate witness.
Right.
So if I have already decided that I trust you enough that I'm going to be vulnerable with you and share truly what's moving through my heart in the days or weeks after the loss of someone so dear to me, I'm tender. I'm going through some complex things inside. If I'm choosing that I'm going to express myself in front of your witness, You don't have to do anything but just receive me. Just look at me, see me, recognize what I'm going through, add nothing, subtract nothing.
Mm.
Just be there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the point is stage 2, the key thing is like you can just go to stage 2 and it doesn't require any special skills. You don't have to be a therapist. You don't have to be a specialist on grief. You can just be present, which is not so hard.
I truly believe that a safe and good, hearty rule of thumb when it comes to having a conversation with somebody who is grieving is less is more. Say less. That's the rule of the conversation. You say less.
That's really valuable advice. Less is more. It's totally valuable. And I know this is true. I think in crisis we often think we desperately, instinctively. I had a friend who's just been diagnosed with cancer, and immediately I was racking my brain for what I think are the sort of cutting edge anti-cancer, lifestyle choices. But I was like, I realized that's not what they were looking for at that moment. But that's what I was inspired, and I shut up pretty quickly. But the point is, I
Sure.
think
Your
it
heart
happened.
was in the right place, of course, but it really came out where one person's like, "Hey, Albert, I've been diagnosed with cancer." And you're like, "But have you tried the fruitarian diet? I know that
Yeah,
didn't work for Steve Jobs, but it might work." And,
yeah, yeah.
and that person's
It's
just
more.
like, "Oh." But being the person, the grieving person, it's like, I have to remember these people love me. They have their hearts are in the right place. They're just ignorant and don't know any better. And that's why we're here on our podcast today, bringing
You
some
might
education.
even explain why it's not helpful. Like, so let's say again, you've just told me, we've called and you've told me that your father's has died and you're going through a process and you're upset. Why is it wrong for me to go, well, when I was grieving, I did this? And have you thought about taking a walk down by the river, or maybe listening to some folk music? Like, why is that wrong?
Well, I don't think that that's wrong per se. And what you
Okay.
offered was pretty gentle. But what I will say is there's a timing, there's a rhythm to these things. So if this is our first conversation, there's a loneliness that is inherent in grief. And someone else being present as I just express what I'm going through alone, but I'm not alone because they're just there witnessing, listening, letting me have my time. That's the gift. When I feel that this is like any other conversation, like 3 weeks ago, before my dad died, when everything was fine, if I called you and I hogged 90% of the conversation just talking about myself, well, I wouldn't allow that to happen. It wouldn't be right. It's got to be give and take. I'll talk to you about what's up with me. You talk to me about what's up with you. We do some sharing back and forth. There's permission that must be given on both sides, from me to myself and from you to me, where it's like, hey, you're going through something huge. This is just about you right now. That's a gift. You don't need to ask me how my week was or how the kids are doing. Everything's okay with me. Have your time. Let me hold space for you while you just, whatever you need to use it for. That's my friendship. That's the gift. Now, if we're having a second conversation and I'm demonstrating that I'm looping, it sounds a lot like that first conversation, often down verbatim. The grief is a loop. I should have done this. If only I had called. If only I had called. I was going to call. I swear I was going to call. If I'm still doing that the next time we talk, especially if it's like days later, now you're going to want to maybe, hey, you're looping here. Is this helpful for you to keep expressing the same thing over and over again? If it's helpful, I'll still give you some more time because I love you. But you can't just let somebody do that forever and ever. But generally, somebody who is allowed to express and be seen, heard, and recognized will move on, because just being witnessed is a part of the healing process.
Interesting. I think you're right too. And one thing that you mentioned is that your grieving, in your way? Are you allowed to, given that there's no handbook for grieving, really? I mean, there's probably are books out there, but are you really allowed to grieve your way? And does it make sense to grieve your way? This is a good idea.
Me personally, or the proverbial you?
The proverbial you, but you personally too, I guess.
The way that I am moving through my grief is very useful. I am a highly trained professional hypnotherapist. I am not suppressing my emotions. I'm very aware of what's going on through me. And I'm completely committed to my fundamental belief that suffering is unnecessary and does nothing for me. So
Right.
when
Why
an
is it important?
impulse,
Why is it important to say that? I think that's true, but why would you say that?
because I have to be cautious in the generalized advice that I offer or the things that I say, because where what I'm doing is years and years and years and years of work. And if I were to recommend to somebody who hasn't done all the work that I've done that they should be doing what I'm doing, it would sound really invalidating and almost like cruel. It would be like, suck it up. But that, and I would never say that to someone, right? But there's my way of moving through my grief process is to remember that my suffering does nothing for me or my dad or my friend who died or my ex-husband. It does none of these relationships are improved by me suffering now. But there is this very common, super prevalent, like epidemic false belief that I think we all are familiar with, which is when somebody I love dies, if I don't express my sadness and show that I wear black and like mope around and oh hey, I'm not done, taking it a day at a time. Like there's this performative element of grieving that's almost required to show the world that you love that person. Because I love them, obviously now that they're gone, I'm going to be all depressed and a mess and can't sleep at night. And now you can see I really did love him. See how much his death is affecting me in this horrible way? That's how much I loved him. The worse I am now, the more I loved him then. That equation is just fundamentally false and wrong. From a spiritual perspective, it's insane.
It's also, I
So,
think, a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure. If there's a big performative element to grieving, then not only is the person feeling like sad and upset and traumatized, probably, that now they have to be, they're going, well, what are the things I have to do to appear like I'm grieving correctly? That's a lot.
right. And grieving correctly for one person might look like performative depression, but grieving correctly for another person might look like performative resistance. Or what's the word I'm looking for? Not resistance.
Denial.
Resilience.
Resilience. I see. Yeah.
Right. Like for the patriarch, the head of the family, the father of three whose brother just died, he's like, it's all right, kids, I'm okay. He's gotta be, because it's baked into identity. And so anytime that grief feels performative, you should stop doing what you're doing and get real with yourself. What do I really feel truly, sincerely, and authentically within myself about what's going on? That's all that matters. If other people are looking or watching or judging, or where we're talking about the right thing to say or the wrong thing to say to someone who's grieving, do not indicate that you are judging how they're grieving. One thing that I've been told is, you're so strong, or you have to be strong. No, I don't. And telling me I'm strong is a fake compliment, which it subtly shames vulnerability.
Right. Right.
I don't want to have to be strong. I want to be able to be a blubbering mess if that's what's called for. I'll determine the extent to which I take care of me. You just let me be. Just let me be.
Yeah. Permission to be a blubbering mess.
Or permission to be strong without either of them being right or wrong.
Right. It's generally, this is speaking to the idea that judgment in general in these situations is not so helpful. Part of it is process, like letting the process happen, whatever it is, is, but that, that's kind of tricky. Feeling this is where I pull out my quote, which I love to say: emotions are the tunnels that take us towards the light. Meaning, we don't know, sometimes we don't know why we're having the emotions that we have. Sometimes we don't like the emotions that we have, but they are usually taking us somewhere. And so they can seem like, what I've noticed about grief too is that, and I remember this in my own grieving, that it often surfaces first as anger. That's how it starts. It's for some reason easier to feel angry at the funeral home. I remember being really angry at the funeral home. Funeral homes are, some of the ones I dealt with were terrible places, but I was still unnecessarily angry at them. But I think it was just the easiest feeling I could feel at the time.
Mm.
And so I had to feel it to realize, okay, it's not all the funeral home's fault. You know, that's where my feelings started.
But it sounds like you had the insight, the self-awareness in that moment of being angry at the funeral director to know, I'm just kind of misplacing my anger right now. Or this is
Yeah.
hindsight.
Yeah, or if it's really not the deep issue. Well, I can tell you the story. I was a newspaper columnist when my father died, and the picture they had of me in the paper, I had this sort of unusual picture where I was sitting at an angle in the in the photograph that ran in the paper like every week. So then, when my father died, the guy who ran the funeral home knew who I was. And when we had to sort of sit down of sort of figuring out the funeral arrangements, he I walked in and he was sitting at this angle, and it was like he was like joking, hey, look, I'm like you, I'm like sitting at this funny angle. I did not think it was funny,
It's
and
not appropriate at all in the circumstances.
that's right. And I remember thinking, what an ass. But maybe because I, like, my character, like, I'm a jokey kind of person, so I wanted to be humorous. But I think this is like this is an issue with people that understand comedy. Comedy requires a little bit of checking in with the audience. Like, where's the audience at? Then maybe, like, if you had checked in with me,
Read the room, man. You're in a
right,
funeral home. Okay,
read the
that's
room.
the room.
That's right. If he had read the room and then was like, here, I'm going to make a joke about your job. And we were chummy to begin with. But so I remember thinking, like, that's one reason why. But you see, I think what I recognized is, like, I was like, I really don't like that guy. But I think it was a lot of the anger feelings I was feeling over my father dying, which just unleashed a lot of emotion. And then I realized I can't just spend all my time being angry at the funeral home. And yeah, I moved on. Uh,
Sure. I actually have an analogous experience in which I was convinced for the first 5 days when I arrived to my father's house, I was convinced that somebody was already there and broke in and stole his valuables.
oh,
Yeah. And I was just completely caught up in this storytelling about it only have been one of these three people, and they're supposed to be his friends, and these fucking rednecks, you can't trust anybody. And that would be my father's advice. My father locked his own house to keep his friends out because he was like, these people steal my shit. It was a known thing that, like, this is not a racist thing that I'm saying. That was his world. And it still is possible that, because there were some things missing. My father didn't have many valuables, but there was this suspicious absence of two Rugers, which are valuable guns. And one was like a historical piece, like it was a valuable. But I found that being like caught up in this drama that I was inventing about like who stole it and blah, 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 it was just a place for this chaotic energy to go. I just like made up a story and then just like put all my chaos energy into that story. And that served a purpose until I realized that, okay, this is, first of all, maybe something was stolen. I'll never be able to conclusively prove that or to find who it was and bring it to justice. That is an impossible outcome. So recognizing that fact, it gives makes zero sense to give even one more drop of energy to this storyline because I have much more important things to deal with. So it served its purpose until I realized the insanity of it, because no good could come from that. No good could come from that. And when we're processing grief back to a more general sense, there is absolutely the need and the value for expressing an impulse of, we were talking before we started going live, and it was like suddenly I was crying. You should not suppress that. You should let it be what it is.
Let it flow.
Let it flow, but then don't indulge it. Let it flow and let it move on and move out.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. One thing, because I think we're a little bit in the business of giving advice a bit, is that the reason that these things are the sort of there's the energetic nature of high intensity emotions is significant, is because both trauma but also just big emotions the body has a need to release the state, release the energy. And if we just repress it, we're just postponing the need for release. And not only that, like there's various theories that suggest that people that have chronic pain or different forms of anxiety are basically repressing states they need to release. So that's why you're just better off letting it go, letting it flow. And what was your other point? Just don't.
Well, my other point was, when you can ask yourself, is there benefit to this? And the answer is yes, right? If I'm feeling like, oh, something wants to come out and be a tear, is there benefit in me expressing it? Yes, for exactly what you just said. The body has its own intelligence. The body is processing in its way. When a tear wants to come, you should let it come. But then to reassess and reevaluate, at what point am I just harming myself or looping around in something that just keeps me down and making myself suffer more and more and more, and piling on and making it worse and worse and worse? That is not going to be valuable. That's not a healthy form of letting things out. That's trapping yourself in a prison of useless, irrelevant emotions that are not helping. But it takes.
Interesting. It really helped me. Remember when we worked on this project about heartbreak, there was some really interesting research that showed that people that have trouble, who do not get over heartbreak quickly, or particularly stay in the heartbreak cycle really long, for long periods of time, that the research showed that they had tended to have an enlarged amygdala, which is an enlarged fear brain. So, and those people are stuck, grieving a relationship forever. But now I'm thinking, ooh, how does that transpose to what you're talking about? If you express just how you feel, like, for example, I loved my dad is gone, that's a bad feeling, I miss him, that seems like kind of normal and healthy. But I think where it gets bad is, this proves that my life sucks and that everything goes bad for me, which would be essentially a fear-based paranoid thought. And if you kind of link those things together and you keep that cycle going for whatever reason, because you might have a reason to do that or it benefits you in some way, you now enter this territory of long grieving or long holding on to your states unnecessarily. And that's what that heartbreak research shows, I think.
I think that you're right. And what's arising for me is those thoughts and beliefs already existed before the loss, before the grief. The everything goes bad for me, or nobody loves me. Oh, the only person who ever loved me for real in my whole life was my dad, and now he's gone, and now I have nobody. I could easily be living that feeling right now. If this was a few years ago, that's exactly where I would be.
Okay, and so why don't you go there now?
Because through my commitment to my spiritual practices, which absolutely include all the hypnotherapy that I have done and continue to do to transform my deepest level of mind, that deep down, I do not have the belief that nobody really loves me and I'm going to be alone forever. If I already have that belief, then this traumatic life event happens, my father dies suddenly, and it's just like, ooh, the most negative things that live inside of me now have this abundance of, I think you called it the energetic nature of grief emotions,
Yeah,
or that
trauma,
it's like it's a highly charged, there's an intensity of the emotions that come,
big energy.
big
Yeah.
energy. And so the negative beliefs feel this big negative energy, and they're like, I get a free ride, and then they can just explode and proliferate.
I'm going to throw something in here too. This is where parts therapy is helpful too, because of course these things cross our minds, especially when you're sad. There's probably a moment where you do feel that, where you do go, nobody loves me and nobody's ever going to love me, or whatever, it's some terrible thought. And the way our minds work is we tend to seize on these things. Like, why did I think that if that wasn't true? Well, because your mind actually is designed to kind of brain goes through all your fears. Doesn't mean they're true, but it goes through them for your own safety. Kind of consider, what if maybe nobody does love me? But if you don't understand this part of us that we have, for example, that we have many parts, so we have many voices and they're not all on side and they're not all saying the right thing, then you can recognize, oh, that was a pretty crazy thing for me to think and feel, but there's probably a part of me, maybe a little part, that does feel that, and I can say, hey, part, what do you need? What do you want? Where does that come from? And when you do that, that's when you remember, oh yeah, so many people do love me. I am so lovable. I do. People come in and out of my life, and they'll continue to do so probably forever. So it's going to be okay. But what I'm saying is, in a way of honoring the dark voice, often moves us to this better place, I think. And
Honoring
I
the
didn't.
dark voice. Interesting.
Yeah, and parts therapy helps you do it, because otherwise you repress it. Your guy, there's a little voice saying, I'm a loser, and I repress that voice, and then every time you feel sad, it's like, hey, maybe you're a loser, and you're in this sort of like battle with this voice. You just let the voice out and go, okay, who are you, voice? You're the loser voice, maybe for whatever reason, because you wore the wrong hat, nobody loves you, but then you recognize, no, that's just a part, just a part. There's a bigger parts that have a lot more to say.
I think that what you're speaking to is one of the benefits that a client, a person will receive after having experienced at least one or two sessions of parts therapy.
Yep.
Then when you go through facilitated parts therapy with a expert and specialist like one of us, you have the awareness outside of the session work that when a thought pops into your mind, you don't identify yourself, your being, your true essence of identity with every thought that comes through your mind, because you've already witnessed that you are not one unified mind, but a collective of different voices and inner child and inner children and inner parents and somebody's opinion here. That's a bunch of parts that make up this thing that you kind of actually rise above and absorb all of. And so when you've already got to that level of work, having done a few sessions of parts therapy or trademarked as internal family systems therapy, then you get to recognize that yourself. And when you're having the thought, oh, nobody loves me, there's a way to go, oh, part of me is still trapped inside of the belief that nobody loves them. But I know that that's not true. And I'll bring that to therapy next week.
I think the key thing is that instead of that voice becoming a kind of it has power because you're repressing it, so on some level threatening, that when you bring that voice into the light and look at it, so to speak, then you realize it is whatever the measure of it is. It's not such, it's just a little voice that says these sometimes ridiculous things. That's for me is the key. That's what it's done for me, where I'm like, instead of like just holding that thing down and fighting it so hard, I just accept that it's there. And it's no judgment on me, because in fact, I don't think there's a person on earth, virtually, except for maybe Donald Trump, that doesn't have a voice that says, maybe you're a big loser. Because everyone has a loser voice, that keeps them kind of honest.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Everybody has a loser voice. You've met people who do not have a loser voice?
Well, I had one, but I transformed it. I no longer have any. There's no part in me. There's
Okay.
present day, no part of me that would talk to me like that ever. It just wouldn't happen. I would not talk to myself that way.
Didn't you just say that kind of did cross your mind when you were going
That
through
I
it?
was a loser.
I
No, I
don't
said that years ago I would have
would have.
defaulted into
Okay.
it.
This is the exact
Yeah, in
transformation
not
that
not the words on, although I would have, I said horrible things to myself back then. But yeah, the conclusion would have been like, oh, now I have nobody, I'm all alone.
Yeah.
But what's coming up for me in this conversation is, this is pure speculation, right? But the difference between mental health and mental illness, it's not a black and white. There is a huge gray spectrum between. But a mentally healthy person is able to recognize that I am not every thought I think, and I don't have to believe every thought that I think. I can question, hey, you know what? That's not helping me, so I'm going to think the opposite. A mentally ill person is so identified with all those negative voices. They're not buying into these are just parts of me. They're like, no, this is truly who I am. It's who I've always been. I've always been a fuck up. I fucked everything up. My parents even told me so. Not even my mom loved me. You don't understand. This is really who I am. I've all of this suffering. It can never be another way.
Literally, some people will report that those voices are very loud in volume inside the head, meaning that's part of the problem, that their ability to manage internal voices, for whatever reason, is challenged. But yes, go ahead.
Well, inside of this conversation, today's topic of choice is grief. I'm I'm just feeling like a tremendous compassion for the mentally ill person facing a life altering loss and grief. A mentally healthy person is going to struggle and grow, and it's going to be hard, but we have all of these, we can continue to move forward in life. A mentally ill person is going to break down. Fragile people will collapse under the weight of a tremendous grief. And when
Right.
my friends are saying to me, you're so strong, and I'm kind of like, you know what? Fuck you. Stop telling me that.
Yeah.
It is a sort of way of saying, I'm not worried about you collapsing under the weight of this grief. I don't see you as fragile or like, oh my God, do we need to call a psych unit for her? It is a sort of compliment compared to, I certainly am a recovered mentally ill person. Like I would have 3 years ago, I would have collapsed under the weight of my father's death. I know that for a fact because I told many people who were close to me very clearly. I said, when my father dies, you better keep an eye on me because I'm going to be suicidal. I straight up spoke that into existence to like multiple people. Like, if my dad dies, I'm telling you, you better have my back. But now he's dead and I'm like, I'm okay. Here I am.
Now, one thing you've mentioned too is that there's no schedule, or you would rather not be a schedule. What you're learning, you're kind of doing it your own way. You're grieving your own way in this situation. And what is, I guess, what would be the advantage of doing that, or why do that?
Well, I think everyone grieves in their own way.
Yes.
I have the luxury because, on the one hand, right, it'd be so easy to be like, I have no family. There's no one to help me with this. I'm all alone. And that's true. And it's like, I can very easily get my mind to think about how that's bad. But on the other hand, nobody's crowding my space. I have the luxury of being allowed to grieve in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can think about, the other side of things where a friend of mine, for example, his dad died 2 years ago. His mother is a very dramatic human being, extremely dramatic human being. I witnessed that woman at like 60 years old, hysterically crying over the death of a hamster. So I can only imagine how she demanded to be center stage when the father of that family died, and it was going to be all about her. And now, how do her children have to be in relation to mom's grief, and like how all of this I'm thinking like the strings of the puppet of like the family system. I'm free of all of that.
Right.
And,
I see.
I have the communication skills and the self, assertiveness, that if I talk to somebody and they tell me don't feel that way, or but I'm going to say don't tell me how to feel. I'm going to feel things in my way. So I'm able to grieve in my way because I have some luxuries and privileges that allow me to grieve in my way. So I want to acknowledge that with gratitude. At the same time, I could be complaining that I don't have anybody to support me. So I'm just highlighting how perspective and perception really do shape your reality. I'm just living proof of it right here, right
now. Do you worry that some people might say taking too much control over the process might lead to the repression of emotions?
Yes, and I think it's a very wise concern to have. But I can say that when thoughts of my father or sad feelings, missing him, when it happens, I let myself have it. I'll just literally stop what I'm doing and just, okay, I'm having grief now. And maybe I will cry for a little bit. Or maybe I've written my father countless letters in my journal since he died.
Since he died.
Yeah, since he died. Oh my God, I've written like in 20 days, I'm probably have written 14 or 15 letters. Just dear dad, just it's part of my problem having a complete process. I'm not just like, I'm good. I this hypnotherapy, so my dad's dead and I'm totally fine. But I'm fine enough to keep moving forward with my life after 2 weeks of a bereavement period to say, now I need to get back to work, get up in the morning, get dressed, show up in life, and continue to be my own person, to not be defined by the sadness of the loss of my dad. It's still part of my life, and it will demand time and energy and attention from me at times.
Now, it's only been 2 weeks, but do you feel like that it's working, meaning this strategy of working on yourself, writing letters to your dad, feeling what you feel in the moment, that, for example, you are in a better place, or at least you've progressed down the road? A better place is a wrong way to say it.
I have my dad right here. This is his urn.
Oh my.
It's not showing you. It's
yeah,
very
I saw it for
beautiful.
A second.
The funeral home told me that it was the most beautiful urn that they'd ever received.
Oh, wow. It is beautiful.
And these are his little toys that he would build these models and paint them. There's like many, many, many model tanks, model trucks, model planes, he was great. Sorry, what was your question? I just wanted to bring him into the conversation. Here's the thing. I want to talk about this. There's a woman named Lihia Hubin, and she is a grief specialist. She's also a graduate of the school where I received all of my diplomas and training in certified clinical hypnotherapy. Her work focuses on transforming grief. She has her own steps. I think she has 11 steps. So, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has the 5 stages of grieving. Lihia Hubin has these 11 steps, and I don't remember what they all are, but the most important thing is that in the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model, acceptance is the final stage. The first stage is denial, and you can go through them at different phases, and it comes and goes. It's non-linear. We all know that, but it's denial, bargaining, depression, anger, acceptance. In Lihia's model of grieving, which I agree with completely, and I think it's very wise, acceptance is step 1. This really happened. This has happened. Until I acknowledge and accept that this thing happened, I cannot begin to grieve it.
Can I ask you something? Is that
yes.
Literally holding your dad's urn on this podcast? Like literally, here it is. That's acceptance. Like your dad's in an urn now. Is that kind of acceptance?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's bold.
Yeah. And I can probably feel it probably has a mixture of feelings right there, right when you do that, I would guess.
But
Uh,
again, I have my faith, and my faith is keeping me afloat. My faith is that we are soulmates and we have traveled many lifetimes and we've been different characters to each other, and we will absolutely be united again. I don't know how, under what circumstances, what it'll look like, feel like, sound like, what planet. I don't know any of that. I don't pretend to know. But I do believe that there are people in this life that you look in their eyes and you know we've been doing this human thing together many, many, many times. And with my dad, we are that. So he might come back to me, his soul might incarnate as my future son. Like anything is possible, you know? And one of my spiritual teachers says that from the perspective of no longer being identified as a body, right? I'm identified as a body, and inside, and with the body comes the ego, that my face looks like this, that's my face, I'm Cassandra and I have this face and body. But then there's this the spiritual identity, and when you're fully disembodied, it might seem like, oh, dad, it's going to be 30, 40 years before we see each other again. But from the dead person's, the disembodied soul's perspective, it's like, I just went to the grocery store. Like, I'm coming right back.
that's interesting. I'm going to the grocery store.
So again, like I might seem like crazy. Like, how can I be smiling and laughing? But I'm fully committed to my beliefs, and my beliefs are scientifically funded. Time is an illusion. Ask any physicist. They're like, yeah, time is just, it's a perception that we're trapped in. It's called the arrow of time. The arrow of time is this illusory idea that time only moves in this direction. But mathematically and scientifically, it's a space-time continuum. And just like you can move in all these different ways through space, technically the fabric of space-time is one thing, and time is also happening in that same way. We just cannot experience it. That's what science says. And that's what I believe on a spiritual level as well. Like, I'm going to miss the man called Bill McLean. I'm going to miss calling him on the phone. I wish I could call him up right now and talk to him and hear his voice. And I can't. That's what I have to accept. I can't. But I do believe that all the love that we shared should be kept alive as love, not as sadness and suffering. And but I miss him. But boo-hoo, I can't see my dad anymore. I'm gonna try. I'm not gonna do it live on this podcast right now. I promise you, I'm grieving in a healthy way. And also, I'm really committed that the love that we shared stays alive in me as love. It doesn't become some ugly, sad, horrible, depressive suffering just because he died. That doesn't make logical sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I think you very much are, walking your own path, and I think it feels like you're accountable to yourself. It helps to believe things. It helps to have your own truth. It helps have some introspection of awareness of your emotions. Anyways, I think I applaud what you're doing. I think this is really good. I think we know it's not an easy thing. It's got lots of stages and steps, but yeah, I like that you said acceptance is the first one, because yeah, you definitely have gotten there. Yeah, for a big part of it.
I do not believe in my father passed away. What does that mean? He died. That's acceptance. Even saying that your loved one has passed away is a form of denial. I'm tough. I want to be right face to face with reality, because staying sane is facing reality.
It's funny. I often wonder about that. I try not to say somebody passed away, because I find it such a strange expression to me. And I will often find myself saying this person died, but I feel bad about it. I feel like I'm being jarring. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be jarring, but I'm okay with being a provocateur. I don't believe that, the mainstream approach to things works.
So maybe we can mention. So one of the things that we both work on or think about is that one of the challenges of heavy emotions, heaviness, grieving, breakups, sadness, feeling stuck in life, is that it's the amount of time we invest in these things. That sometimes it feels that, and that's what people are worried about. I think when people grieve, they kind of hope, I hope I'm not doing this for like 2 years or something like that, or even 6 months or even a month. And do you think that you have some say over your grieving process? Do you think that you can have some way to manage how long you want to grieve for, or the way you want to grieve, or should you be doing that?
Well, again, the question requires a definition of the term grieving, right? So like my knee-jerk reaction was to say, well, I'm always going to miss my father. I'm sure of that. Like I still miss my first boyfriend, my first true love. We dated from ages 17 to 21. And I still to this day miss that guy. I want to like just a few days ago, he used to say this stupid thing. He used to say many like stupid things. That was part of his, he was just like a funny young guy and he'd say like dumb things. And one of them was that he went to school with a girl named Karen Dudas. And he'd be like, let's do this like Karen Dudas. I never met Karen Dudas in my life. And here 20 years later, I'm walking out of my house going, let's do this like Karen Dudas. It's like, what is that? Like I'm always gonna, feel love for him and wish that I could just hang with him, but we can't because that would be weird. And I'll always miss my dad, but I'm not grieving over my first love anymore. I'm not suffering for his absence in my life. I accept that our lives went different ways, and I'm glad that he's living a happy life without me. With it comes to, can I control how long I'm going to grieve for my dad? Well, what does it mean to be grieving? Does it mean to be struggling with the suffering that is attached to the missing? I'm not setting a time limit, but I'm just using my decision, my conclusion that I don't abide by, I don't accept, I fundamentally reject the equation that my suffering is proof of my love. I fundamentally reject that. And when suffering feels valuable to me, truly and sincerely, then I'll do it. Sometimes I know I need to just cry. I feel sad. I'm not going to deny myself. I'm not going to suppress it. That's another way of hurting yourself. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to believe that crying more is going to do anything better for me. Like the right amount. And then I have to just pat my dad's urn like I'm patting him on the head, and he would hate that. He would hate it.
That's funny. What's funny is that I just did a documentary called The Laughter Code about depotentiation. So it's this fancy word which basically means letting things go. And the issue is that they think that the human brain evolved to depotentiate badly. The explanation would be like, so if you get all worked up because there's a python in the tree, it wouldn't be good if you forgot about it really quickly. If you got all messed up about, let's say you're the head of the tribe being taken away by a tiger, again, it wouldn't be good for you to go, oh, tomorrow's another day, that's fine. They want that you're designed to hold on to negative experiences, grieving experiences, sad experiences, but also frightening experiences for a long time, because evolution favored the people who did, the people who stayed paranoid or who stayed sad had a certain evolutionary advantage.
Is that's the science about sadness? So the fear thing I understand, right?
I'm actually extrapolating with sadness. You're right, because I don't know. I don't know that. I'm extrapolating with the sadness part, but it seems to me that people that place more import on their dark states, including sadness, would have a certain evolutionary advantage, because they are noting, oh, a python swallowed my uncle, and now I'm going to grieve it for a while, as opposed to you don't grieve it and then the python swallows you. I think that's kind of where I'm going with it.
I'm gonna need to see the data because what I know is the anthropological science of if you misidentified a stick as a snake, you would survive. But if you misidentified a snake as a stick, you
Sick.
could die.
That's right.
So, but that is related to the fear circuit. Now you're talking about like sadness and
I
I'm
just
not following that there could be any benefit evolutionarily speaking to ruminating in sadness. I think that makes somebody more vulnerable to be attacked by a predator.
I'm maybe just observing that the depotentiation factor extends from fear and paranoia to grief to also sadness. Like famously, when people get
Sure.
sad, they stay that way for a while. Not everybody, but people often do. And also when they get paranoid, they stay that way for a while. That is because the brain won't let those things go. And what we have discovered, what this documentary is about, just to frame it,
I
is
can't wait
about
to see it. Where can I see it? Where can I
it's on
find it?
YouTube. It's on YouTube on this channel right now. So
Okay. And the
so
title is
the laughing code.
The
Because
Laughing Code.
what you'll notice that people in trance, you can easily hypnotize them to cry and they get very upset and they look like they're deeply troubled, and then they can easily laugh off those emotions within seconds, and they are no longer in any way upset about what they were before. Now, so this is depotentiation, and I'm not also suggesting, oh, this applies to grieving, but it maybe applies to this sort of this idea of maybe sometimes you can get over things really quickly and that's okay. Meaning some of the time you're just going to get upset and then feel better and it's over. And that's okay. Because just seeing it happen made me realize it can happen more than people realize. Um,
Mm. So you're saying that you would hypnotize people, get them really sad to the point that they're crying sad tears, not happy laughing tears, sad tears. And then very quickly, because they are in a trance state and you are performing hypnosis, you could say, and now we're going to shake that off and you'll think about the happiest, funniest joke you've ever heard. And in 1, 2, 3, just start laughing and enjoying life. And they're like,
actually, to be fussy, the way I did do it is content free on purpose, meaning, so this is what you do. You hypnotize people to laugh first, and that's very easy. You can hypnotize people and they start laughing and they're having a good time. Why? Because you want the sort of base state to be kind of upbeat and laughter. Then you just have them look at the floor. I have them look at the floor, and there's research that shows that just looking down can trigger more negative emotions. That's right. And so when you look at the floor, you feel a little bit darker. So then, because they're hypnotized, you can allow them to go way deeper. They basically find out what they're sad about at that moment. And so you don't have to tell them. In fact, you stay out of it. You stay out of it. Then they look down, they feel sad, and then you just simply have them lift up their heads. And when they lift up their heads, because looking up creates a lilt in optimism, you can easily go to laughing. So they take the same dark, deep, sad emotions that they're feeling looking down, and they now laugh them off. And once you create that bridge, my bet, I haven't done it enough to know that this is true, is that people can train their nervous system to start doing it. So I can feel sad and then I can just laugh it off, feel sad and just laugh it off. And so that to me, and this all happens in 1 minute. It doesn't take, it's not a long process. That's what's intriguing about it. Now, I would not say, like, for example, somebody in your situation where I could say, oh, that deep sadness you feel about your father's death, you should just laugh it off. But maybe in trance, it might be interesting to see when you're having dark feelings, if you can just process them swiftly and move to the next thing. It's just why not? It's not, there's no quality. I didn't see any quality of repressing any dark state or holding back any dark state. They went all in. People were sobbing and then they were laughing.
I can't wait to watch it.
Mm,
The Laughing Code, right here on YouTube on Albert
yes.
Nuremberg Hypnosis channel. Um, and what it making me think of is I'd love to know, and I don't think there's a way to even get the accurate answer. What percentage of how we grieve is innate
Social expectation.
and what percentage is socialized cultural behavior?
Right. And I think that's been your central beef here, which is that, and I think I
This is
remember
my
that
central beef. You're exactly right.
is that you're wrestling with social expectation at every turn. When people are grieving, they're constantly dealing with social expectations because it's a very whatever traditional excuse me people are very structured about the way they approach grief. So
Mm.
you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. This is what you're going to do at the funeral home. This is what you do after the funeral home. This is what you do at the cemetery. This is what you do the few days after. And some of that's good. In some certain cultural religions, there are these sort of, they're there for a reason, I think. One thing
Well,
I look,
I think if you're in a place like Iran or I don't know, I'm trying to think of non-controversial places, but the whole world is erupting into war zones. I'm like, should I have set up? But I'm thinking about, ancient cultures where the religion is very clear and everybody believes in the same thing. I think it's can be very healthy. It's like there's a process and we all do it the same way, and then we're all going to come together and move through this together like we always do. And there's this sense of familiarity and continuity. But in cultures like Canada and the United States, where even the religious families are doing their own things anyway, they're that somebody else saying you have to do it this way is like a burden.
I think you're right. Well, I think especially I think in your situation, given that you're not experiencing family support because of they're not maybe
Absence of
there.
family.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think your strategy of like, I've got to figure this out myself and I'm going to create my own grieving path does seem exactly right to me. I think there may be, um, elements or moments where you probably, because by definition, grieving as you pointed out, about vulnerability, but it's also about, there's an element of just something we don't know. We don't know what we're going to feel. We don't know where it goes. That there has to be I guess there's some humility about what comes next. um
Yes, and I think that uh, again, presence is like a superpower.
yeah.
If I'm thinking, well, I'm handling my grief well today, but what about tomorrow? What about the next day? What about when it's Christmas and I can't see my dad? This is the anxiety brain that's always looking into the future and imagining the worst case scenario and feeling bad in
Hmm.
the present about the
Hmm.
unexpected future. I don't fuck with that. I've never had anxiety issues. My issues always in the past have been depression, looking at the past, looking at the past, looking at the past, not being present. Now I don't do that anymore. I'm present. Anxiety brain is not a person I've never had that character, but I work with these clients, right? Looking in the future, looking in the future, looking in the future, feeling bad about that. Again, not being present. Presence is a superpower. So I have the trust in myself and in the way that I've, been building myself, my practices, my beliefs, my self-care routines, how I can depend on myself. I do take care of myself. That's all in place already. I can live one day at a time. And when another moment of a wave of grief comes, and I'm telling you, 100% guaranteed, I will be crying for my father again. I know it. I'm not denying that. But I will move through it in the right way because I've already been helping myself move through negative emotions in a healthy way for a substantial period of time. Like
Yeah.
I shared with you earlier, I came to this epiphany through this experience that all these days of my life, I've had what we call spiritual practice. This is my spiritual practice. I meditate, I do hypnosis, I do hypnotherapy, I do yoga. I make sure I drink enough water and sleep well, and forgiveness and love are very important to me, blah, 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 blah. Those are my practices. When life throws down the gauntlet, it's spiritual game day. It is not time to practice. It's time to see if all those things I've been practicing actually help me on the field. And what I've found is that, yes, they are. They're helping me quite a bit. I've got a robust toolbox and a really good friend inside of myself to help me through this. And I feel like I'm going to be okay. I'm already okay. I can do it. I can manage. I'll be fine.
I like what you're saying. I like the way you said it.
Thanks.
Good. I think the only thing I would say is the balancing factor is it just occurred to me as you're speaking that part of the challenge here is that losing, like somebody dying, like in our world, like death is so crazy and absolute that though, maybe people might differ, part of it leaves like a question. Like we don't know where they went exactly. Some people might know, but I feel like I don't know where they went. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what's next. I don't know what it means. There's a bunch of questions, and it's okay for those questions to be there, and it's okay for me not to have the answer. And right now, and that's part of the journey. That's why, like, even though I did not enjoy people dying in my life, that you pointed this out, that weirdly enough, it helps you grow. I look at the deaths I went through and I see that weirdly, oddly, they were good for me. Not, and because I guess they challenged me to learn, move, change, grow. And I would certainly rather have the person back than the progress I made. But it's still, that's kind of the way it works. So yeah.
I agree. But it's choice. You chose that you were going to you were going to grow through it, that you were going to take on the emotional challenge that came with burying your brother,
Mm-hmm.
and rise through it.
Mm-hmm.
You could choose to wallow and suffer and be breaking down in tears right now and saying, no, but he was such a good man and he was so young. And you could still be suffering if you didn't choose, I'm the type of person who accepts that life comes with all sorts of inevitable pains and problems. People I love are going to die. I'll be betrayed. I may be robbed. All sorts of things can happen. And at least some of them will definitely happen to every human being that's alive. And when those moments come, who am I? I get to decide who I am.
Yeah.
Am I a victim? Or am I a mature, emotionally mature adult who accepts there are things in life that are going to be inherently very challenging, difficult, and confrontational? Confronting of the darkest things that live inside of your own heart and mind is going to bring it all right out.
Yeah.
Who are you in that moment? Are you small and little and helpless, or are you somebody who takes it on and just does what you have to do to grow and move on? Those are really the only two choices.
I like it. I think you've framed it pretty well there. Maybe that's a good place for us to kind of wrap up.
Sure. And I just want to say, though, I'm not like, I would never shame someone whose process of crying and grieving, or the depressive stage lasts longer, whatever. It's, you got to do what you have to do.
I think
at a certain point,
I think what people may not know is that there is some choice. There might be choice. Like I would say, like therapy accelerates the process. Often any kind of therapy accelerates the process of grieving, but good therapy, obviously, a lot. And I just think there may be other options too. I think what I was always worried about is that when bad things happen, I just thought I was going to descend into a lake of grief. But no, when you express and work it through with people, with help, then it gets better faster. Not, faster isn't the only goal, but it's just nice that that's there too.
Smoother, perhaps.
Smoother. Okay, well, take smoother.
I like smoother, and I do want to highlight that I think the key choice isn't, I don't, choosing not to feel this way, right? If it was that easy, nobody would ever have a negative emotion. Just be like, I'm choosing I don't feel this way and now I'm better. No, the choice is I choose to believe that I am allowed to move on from this. I choose and I believe that I don't have to keep suffering like this for any reason. I might still be suffering, but it's not required. It's not my obligation. It's not my duty. It's not my responsibility. I owe it to no one or nothing. No good comes from this. And I'm choosing to see it for what it is. That will free you up. That's an empowering choice.
I like that. That's our empowering thought of the day.
Yep.
Or the week or the month.
Give yourself permission to heal.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been the Staying Sane podcast. We've been
Staying
dealing
sane through grief.
Through grief. And if you are interested in hypnotherapy, you can find Cassandra McLean on the internet, of course. I always say gethypnotherapy.com, but it's also McLeanhypnotherapy.com. Or McLean?
McLeanhypnotherapy.com. And yeah, at Get Hypnotherapy is my Instagram.
Okay, right. And so, yeah, this is this occasional crazy podcast that we do, and it was very powerful and interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. That's not an easy story to share. So
thank you for listening.
Yeah, of course, and very much appreciated. And
I hope it was valuable. The only point is that, if one person was even a little bit inspired or helped.
Yes. I was that one person. So yeah, and there's hopefully more. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I find it powerful. Okay.
All right, there goes Larry. Okay.
Okay, there's a cat. All right, perfect timing. The cat wipe. All right.
Okay.